I think, okay, let me wait and see if all is okay. Okay, so um, hello everyone. So I'm going to start my conference. The contribution of blacks for the creation of Canada. The example of slaves and soldiers from 1604 to 1945. So first at all, I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you and your audience my new book and researches on a very little known historical aspects, not much popularized with the public opinion for our country. These historical aspects is about the contribution of blacks on the building of Canada for centuries. And this presentation will only analyze the part of the slaves, the black slaves, and the black soldiers, who are far from being the only fields of the contribution of blacks for the construction of our country. But in my book, I just want to stop on these the two fields. So then, following recent news, we noticed that the increasing interest to approach these historical aspects to enlighten public opinion on certain questions. So finally, I would like to focus on that, and I first will speak. Will make my the presentation before answering the question, because it helps me to for my organization. So at the first time, I'm going to present, and after that, I will give you 20 minutes if you have questions and ask me. Um, so this will allow me, so as I say, to keep the common thread of my presentation and to better organize our conversation. So therefore, I need right now, I think, 40 minutes to begin. So my presentation is divided in two parts. The first one is the historical review on blacks in Canada, or history over 400-year-olds. So Matthew da Costa was the first uh, black mentioned in black history, and he was born in 1589 and died in 1619. He helped Samuel de Champlain to communicate with the Mi'kmaq people in Acadia during the Champlain first tribe in Canada. So Da Costa was not a slave; he was a free man, an interpreter. And why the Champlain recruited him because he spoke several languages, including Mi'kmaq. And it's very important to know how is it possible for him to speak Mi'kmaq, and that we just guessed it was not the first time for him to come in Canada. So anyways, that is not the most important. So we have to mention that he was a descendant of the Portuguese colonization of Africa, especially the Kingdom of Congo during the 15th century, when Portuguese was in the contact with Kingdom of Congo, or Empire of Congo. I prefer to use the word empire when I speak about Congo, because it was not a kingdom. It was more than large than a kingdom. And nowadays we know Mathieu da Costa because we have Post Canada. We can see his image, and in some books archive. But at the same time, some historians says he was not here in Canada. It was just a myth. But that is not most important element. What is important is his name is here in Canada since the beginning of the 17th century. And after him, we will see the involvement in New France from 1628 to 1833. So, many Canadian citizens mistakenly believe that blacks enslavement never existed in our country, so in Canada. It is because I think the historian of our country, they have not done their job or played the role expected to them. Because this history is true, and it's here. We can, if we visited the archive, we can see it is a history. So an settlement in New France under the French regime, because in New French history we have two regimes. The first one is the French regime since Jacques Cartier, 1534. But here in my presentation, I'm just going to start at the date 1628, because the first black slave in New France in northern Canada is in this date until the end of the War of 7 Years, 1763. So, as you know, New France was a colony more preciously of viceroyalty of the Kingdom of France, located in North America from eastern Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. It is a very, very, very large territory. So it existed, as I said, since 1534. So Olivier Lejeune was the first black slave mentioned in Quebec. If I said Quebec, it's just Quebec City. And at this time, the name was not Quebec. I forgot the name. I will guess it, but it is a indigenous name. Olivier Lejeune was the first black slave mentioned. So he was sold in this time by the Kirk brothers. The Kirk brothers, during the 4 years between 1628 to 1632, Quebec City was occupied by the British, and it was not freed. Olivier Lejeune was not freed until at the end of his life. So from 1628 to 1760, some historians said more than one blacks brought from New England, West Indies, or directly from Africa were enslaved in northern New France, which corresponds, as I say now, the current province of Quebec, but not only Upper Canada, now Ontario, and the other territory in Canada. So the people of New France at the 17th century, they were very interested by slavery, black enslavement, and they were claiming for their Negroes, because it was the word used at this time. People used to say Negroes. That's why we have to be careful with the word we use here. The legislation of slavery will start, especially when Louis XIV had decided in 1689 the black enslavement could continue in New France, and it will become effectively through in 1709. That for the first time an order was made on this subject. So it's very important now when Louis XIV gave population of New France this authorization. We will see the enslavement of black people will become very important in New France. So African slave. In New France, these enslavement will continue under the British regime from 1763 to 1833, corresponding to that of abolition in British Empire. So in 1760 or 63, after the Treaty of Paris, when the British took New France, there were just over 101,000 black slaves, men, women, children, out of a total population of 64,000. or just we can say if we use the percentage, it's 2% of the population. So the capitulation of New France and the maintenance of black enslavement. So not only did the English people maintain black enslavement in New France, but also they reinforce it. We will see the black enslavement will become very more and more important in New France under the British. So this part of history is very important, and unfortunately, it's not known in Canadian history. And we would like to one day to know how many black slaves were in New France under the British and the French and British regimes. So the exact number is not often in this history of New France will probably never be known. There are an estimated, so some historians say 1,000 if we take the 205 years, and as a historian said, it is more than that. So what is important is we had black enslavement in here, and why it is difficult. It is difficult to know that because of several reasons. So we are in a vast territory, and the definition of slave is not the same for all. And we had at this period illegal counting system. For example, if we read a book of Marcel Trudel, his book is in French, L'esclavage au Québec. Trudel shows that already between 1622 to 1829, the identification of blacks sometimes posed problem. This was true especially between 1710 and 1755, period during which slaves are not part of the civil society. You know, they are not allowed to be counted as citizens, and that's why we have a problem to count them. And another reason is a very high mortality among slaves with short life expectancies, and especially among the children. And they were movable goods whose life counts a little. So that's why it is very difficult to give an exact number to count them, but we can say it is more than 10,000 slaves during this period. And it's very important because, you know, Canada is not a very populated country. So the second question, very important, is what did black slaves bring to the emerging Canadian economy? Because nowadays people refuse to recognize the contribution of black in the creation of the world. For example, in the history of the United States, we all know if it was under the slavery, the plantation, the economy of the United States will not be the same. And if we try to see what is about the Canada, we can say it is exact because they were free labor. And once you require a slave, you don't need to depend on other money. They were domestic work and guarding and yards. So and we have historians like, for example, authors like Lawrence Hill, the author of the Book of Negroes in French. I think the title is Aminata, yeah. Lawrence Hill strongly argues that blacks' enslavement should not be minimized in New France because the slaves were there and did the most difficult work. Some died by rebelling from overwork. So that's very important, what Lawrence said. So black enslavement was one of the Canadian first economy. So this country has also been partly built on the strength and blood of black slaves from Africa, from the Caribbean, and from the United States. A reality that is very difficult now to admit in the 21st century for many Canadians. They did not know the history, and they did not accept these contributions. So after Lawrence Hill, if we try to see what Marcel Trudel said, he put it very well and in these terms. I'm going to read what Trudel said. He said blacks fulfills several functions, including the following: replenishing the army, serve as support for the elderly, the widow, or the orphan, helps increase the commercial capital of the aristocracy and the emerging bourgeoisie, to be servant and to participate in education of the master children, and above all to constitute a source of docile and cheap labor in an attempt to defeat requirement of all of local workers. That is what Marcel Trudel said when he gave information about the contribution of black in Quebec. And it is the same situation everywhere in the rest of Canada during this period of slavery. And one of the best known cases of black slaves in New France is a lady. Her name is Marie-Joseph Angelique. Marie-Joseph Angelique is one of the most known on this very unknown history. Her case proves that not only blacks enslavement was a real phenomenon that persisted until New France, but also several cases we had mistreatment, racism, and abuse against blacks were reported from the first moment African slaves arrived in this country. So it's very important to know this history. So the second time is after the American War of Independence. So we will see white loyalists and black slaves coming in Canada after the American War of Independence. So during this moment, so thousands of free or enslaved black people fought for the British, hoping to gain their freedom along with a promise of land and different promises. So by 1783, when the Treaty of Paris was signed, British forces and their allies fled to such locations as Europe, West Indies, the Caribbean, and the province of Quebec. And the province of Quebec will be divided in 1791 in two different provinces, Upper and Lower Canada. But before that, our provinces, Ontario, was in Quebec. We know that. Between 1783 and 1785, more than 3,000 blacks or former enslaved people settled in Nova Scotia in the Maritimes. Nova Scotia, British New Brunswick, a province created in 1784 for the white loyalists. We know that. And in these places, they faced hostility, racial segregation, low-paying jobs, and inequality. So Robin Wings, in his book Blacks in Canada, mentioned that history of them in the Maritimes and other part of Canada. So we can say, in addition to blacks who arrived in the Canada as slaves in New France and during the years of British regime, others came to settle there from the 13 American colonies that became the United States after the independence. And because of the promises made by English, so agriculture farm, freedom. If you say to a slave to get freedom, I think some of them will be very interested and accept to follow you. So we have a very important African slave arrival with white loyalists and free blacks during this period. So we have also black soldiers who had fought on the side of the English. There were white. Sorry about that. I'm receiving message, but it was not. Okay. Established. So we are talking about more than 50,000 white loyalists and more than 5,000 blacks. So establishment of the newcomers, so in the Maritimes, Upper and Lower Canada, but also we will see them in Newfoundland, Prince Edward Island, etc. Everywhere where the loyalists was, because they came with their slaves. So that is very important to notice. And if nowadays we go to Nova Scotia, we will see Africville. But Africville was, I think, just created before the arrival of the Loyalists, because we had the connection between the Acadia and the West Indies and the slaves coming there. So, and for Africaville, I just let you know to check the history. And we have another moment, the 1812 war and the black migration to Canada. So we know how important, the significance of the 1812 war in Canadian history. So as a colony of Great Britain, Canada was swept up in the war 1812 and was repeatedly invaded by Americans. The war was fought in Upper Canada, Lower Canada, and in the Great Lakes and Atlantics, and in the United States. The Peace Treaty of Ghent, which ended the war, largely returned the status quo. So we have here the same situation. During the war, the British and Canadians, they make more promises to blacks, but also to the indigenous, to ask them to fight with them against the Americans. And blacks perceive that war involvement in the army as a way of bondage, to end the dehumanization, because we all know enslavement, slavery is dehumanization. Sorry about that. So it's very important. And in this period also, as I said, the contribution of the indigenous people. We know Tecumseh, this is an indigenous chief, and he's very important part during the 1812 war, and he will die in this war, and that make very demotivated after indigenous people in Canadian wars. So after that, we have another moment, the end of black enslavement in British Empire, 1832, and with the legislation will start in 1834. It is very important so to point out the main region for that, because we have different reasons why slavery was abolished. We have industrial revolution in Europe. So machine was decoded, and that can replace slavery in several areas. We have the role played by the religious, the Methodist religious, the Quakers, the humanists, but also we have the anti-slavery revolts everywhere in America. For example, the Maroons in Jamaica. We know the uprising in Haiti and the independence in 1804. The uprising in Cuba, etc., everywhere. So we are in the context in a very difficult climate, and that is one of different elements why slavery will be abolished. So there were black writers also who raised awareness of the condition of being slave. Like the first of them is Oluda Ikiano, a very strong black personality, and also we have Josiah Henson, Harriet Tubman, Richard Pierpont, different people who contributed for the end of slavery. So we have a combination of factors that explain that there was no other choice but to abolish black enslavement in Canada and in British Empire in general. Sorry. So Oludaki, as I said, it is very important on this history. So one of the immediate consequences of abolition of black enslavement in British colony was the black slave arrival to Canada from the United States in search of freedom. And this period of history is very known, Underground Railroad, and Canada is present as a paradise at the opposite of United States, the help for black people. So the Underground Railroad, secret or in France, le chemin de fer clandestin, until the abolition of slavery in the United States, 1865. And I think the Underground Railroad is very popularized by Barbara Smoker in Canada, in her level, Underground Railroad. But in this level, she just point out the good side, the positive aspect that Canada is a land of freedom for blacks, but she did not mention anything about racism, about separation of schools, and different things black faced when they came here in Canada. So in this period or underground railroad, the arrival of freedom seekers is very important. So, and that's why we will have the pioneering role of blacks' personality, as I said, like Tubman, Pierpoint, and different people. So these black who arrived to Canada following this war, they settled in Maritimes and in Lower and Upper Canada, and more than 50,000 people were supposed to have taken refuge here in Canada. And after the Civil War in the United States, some historians said 50 or 60% of blacks communities they go back to the United States. That showed us it was not easy for them their life here in Canada. So and Robin Winks said that he said Canadian Legendary today claims that at least 60,000 fugitives. We call them fugitive, but it's not the good term. There was freedom seekers. Slaves were resident in Canada in 1860. Very important. So if it was not they decided to go back in the United States. Nowadays we will see it will be not the same population of black in Canada. So Josiah Henson, as I said, the True Man, and etc. They are very important. And another moment I would like to mention is the blacks' migration to British Columbia. It begins in the 1850s, and their origin is California. They are not slaves, but they faced racism, discrimination, and they decided to go. And it made up a successful businessman. They have the possibility to go to British Columbia, especially the Vancouver Island, for different reasons. As I said, the racism and discrimination, etc., etc. But very important element was at this time the governor of Vancouver Island, James Douglas, accepted to welcome them, and that's very important because James Douglas himself, her mother was a black woman from Barbados, and his mother and his father is from Scotland, and that's why he was very interested by black history in North America, and he permit them to live in this part of Canada. Once they are in British Columbia, after being welcomed by Douglas, blacks were used as security guards against the Aboriginals, for example. And we will see Douglas will go in 4-5 years after, and British Columbia ceased to be an exception of blacks, and they will start to face racism. And at this time also we have the rush to the west, and Canadian authorities they prefer white people from Europe or United States than the migration of blacks. And if we try to see newspaper at this period, we will see different posters on that. Now we no longer want blacks in British, and their life will be very, very, very difficult. So we have after that the blacks on the prairies. It is the prairies, as you say, is a very vast region, sparsely populated, and in the second half of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, the Canadian federal government strongly encouraged mass immigration to this region. So migrants from Europe, but also from the United States, including blacks from Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, etc. And also blacks from the Eastern Canada for looking job, because opportunities was more interesting in the West than the East. So between 1908 and 1911, we have 1,000 black Americans from Oklahoma in the prairies, for example. And they were very welcome at the first, and it will be the same history as British Columbia. So during the crisis of 1929, black people from the prairies went to the cities like Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, because the racism spread across the prairies. Politicians, especially, sometimes conservatives made some hostile speech towards them, for example, in the schools, newspapers, for example, etc., etc. But not only in politics, different kind of populations also. The integration of blacks community into the prairies so was no longer possible. So increasingly rejected and unwanted African Canadians on the prairies remained distant and withdraw into them. That is their history in the prairies. And it's very important to know all these different migration of blacks in Canada. And after that, we have the First World War, and especially after the Second World War, in the migration of the Caribbean in the glorious 30s, the most known and popularized. We know different people from the Caribbean. So, but in my research, in my book, I stopped in 1945 because I just would like to see their contribution during this period. But we can see different people coming after that period, especially from the Caribbean, so the domestic women, and during the multicultural politics of Canada. Now Africa will be upon, and the immigrant from Africa will start. And in the 1970s and 1980s, etc., etc. So the migration of African people from Africa is very, very recent. If it is different from the slavery at the beginning. So it's very important. So to sum up the first part, we can say the migration of blacks to Canada is very old. And it is old as that of the Europeans, 400 years. Blacks came to Canada under the French, and they preceded the British to this country. But it is not easy to tell nowadays because history is not easy to tell to people. But if you read the books and you see the article, you will see it's very old, the blacks arrival in Canada. So in the second part, we will analyze now their enormous contribution to the building of the Canada through their engagement in Canadian armies and wars from the 1812 to the Second World War. So I'm going to see now their contribution as soldiers. Now I'm done with the slaves, the different migration. I want just to see what blacks had given to Canada as being slaves. So it is my second part, and I entitled it as they died and suffered for Canada. So black soldiers, African Canadian in Canadian armies and wars, 1812, 1945. This is a very, very completely forgotten contribution during the Canadian major military celebration. For example, in November 11 or different ceremonies, we don't just we don't mention the contribution of black. We don't tell anything about some very important people like Richard Pierpoint, like William Hall, like John Ware, and different people in this moment. And I think it's very important to remind that and to make people aware of that. So black participation in Canadians war before the Confederation, because in this part I'm going to divide it in two parts. First one is before the Confederation, so 1812, 1867. So here we have the first time is the War of 1812. It is in Europe, but it also took place in America and elsewhere in the world. In Africa also, if I, for example, I take the example of Senegal, I know during the war, Senegal, the colony of Senegal became a colony for British for different for some years. It was the same during the War of the 7 years when the colony of Senegal, Saint Louis, and these territories became British colony from 1758 to 1799. So as we can see, the war of 1812 is very important, and it is not only in Europe or in North America, it is everywhere in the world. So the United States wanted to take this opportunity to annex Canada, and Great Britain had a problem to fight the war in Europe, and that's why they asked the minorities to help Canada and Great Britain. So in this context, the colored corps will be created, and someone like Richard Pierpont will play a very important role on these corps. Some historians say it is 400, like 500 or 500 people in the colored corps. And the colored corps contributed different battles. For example, the Battle of Moravia Town in 1812 and in 1813. The Battle of Stony Creek in June 1813. The Battle of Niagara in 1813. The Operation of Satogay, Crystal's Farm in 1813. The Second Battle of Niagara in 1814. And all these battles that happened between 1812 and 1814, there were blacks among the recruits, and they play a very important role to help Canada to be an independent country. Because if Canada lost this war, we will be not in the same country today. We know that. So it's very important to remind this history. And people like Pitt Point played a very important role. I know a building in London, Ontario is named on him, Pitt Point, but his role is very, very important. I'm trying to go fast and see. A second moment is a rebellion in Upper and Lower Canada, 1837 and 1838, Upper Canada, so Ontario. Mackenzie, William Leon Mackenzie, he wanted to end British rule and do like Americans, for example, a free state in Upper Canada. So to fight against Mackenzie, among the troops recruited to the among the soldiers, we had black people from Toronto, from Chatham, from Niagara, all these regions of Upper Canada. And I have here a citation in the book of Wings. Wings say in 11 December 1837, cause of Negroes in the early 19th century, few Upper Canada militia units included blacks. When the Mackenzie Rebellion broke out, the government welcomed the black men into the provincial forces. On 11 December 1837, a militia order authorized by Captains Thomas Ritchie and James Shear to raise a corps of Negroes. 4 days later, approximately 50 blacks had joined the corps. We see that just in 4 days we have 50 persons, and you know the uprising is took 1 year, and it is very important to guess how many people were in this. So and they played a very important role. And in my researches, I know someone like Wilson Ruffin Abbott. He fought against the Mackenzie Rebellion, and he was among the freedom seekers from United States. He was born in 1801 in United States, and he died in Canada in 1876. So sorry about that. I'm going just to. So during this moment, the lieutenant governor, I think one of the officials said something very important. In the spring of 1837, before the war ended, the lieutenant governor publicly admitted the contribution of African Canadians in the outcome of the battle and decided to be grateful. Here is what he said. In the spring of 1837, Lieutenant Governor Sir Francis Bonhead addressed the legislature to publicly praise black Upper Canada Canadians for their loyalty, their service during the recent rebellion. So that is very clear here, their participation and what they bring to Canada. So we have the same situation in the Lower Canada. Nowadays, Quebec, the rebellion was of an identity and nationalistic nature. We know that the problem between Quebec and the part of Canada, and so the black was among the recruits to kill these revolts by the loyalist force of the government. So after that, we have African Canadians even went to fight outside Canada with Canadian forces to support England. And I have three different countries I am going to tell you. The first one is the Crimean War 1853, 1856. And in this war, for different reasons, I can't take this occasion to make clear. But the most important is we had Canadian and British soldiers, and among them there were black people. After that, we have the Indian Mutiny, also called the Sepoy Mutiny, or the First War of Independence of India. Uh, uh, Widespread but unsuccessful rebellion against the British rule. It is in 1857 until 1859. So it began in Meerut by Indian troops, the Sepoys, and we know in the British colonies or in France we used to have different corps, local different corps fighting for them. And here in the service of British East India Company, it spread to Delhi, Agra, Kanpur, and Lucknow. And one of the most successful African Canadians in these two wars was William Hall of Nova Scotia, a descendant of loyalists from the United States. So during the Battle of November 1657, he allowed the British troops to pass an important fortress of the Sepoy, while he was the only soldier still abroad of the ship HMS Shannon in Calcutta. He played a very important role, and this act was welcomed by British authorities. That's why William Nelson became the first black man to have the Victoria Cross Medal, a very high distinction, the first Nova Scotian, the third Canadian, and until nowadays we have only 95 Canadians have received this medal. That means it's very important. And if we know the case of Hall, it is just because of this medal. But the others blacks participated, we don't know them. That's why it's important to also see to revisit this history of the contribution of black in Canadian history. So Hall is very important. So after that, in British Columbia, we had after the establishment of blacks in the 1850s, we had a black unit to secure the province against the indigenous, as I said that. And these troop of fighters was called the Victoria Pioneer Rifles. Some people say did African Rifles from 1861 to 1865. And it was the first time we have a very important unit of soldiers that. So, and after we will see the contribution of black as soldiers to fight against the Fenian and the recruitment of them. So the Fenian, they are immigrants from Irish, and in the 1860s, they made several attempts to invade British colonies of present day, so Canada, with the ultimate goal of gaining Irish independence from Britain. Because they are not able to fight against Britain in Europe, they will try to do it in North America, and especially in Canada. So after that, we have the African Canadian in the world after the Confederation. Okay, after the Confederation, we have the war in South Africa, First World War, World War I, and World War II. So in South Africa, the Anglo-Boer War in South Africa. So it is from 1899 to 1902, and we had the Canadian troops sent there to support the motherland, and blacks joined it, the recruits. The same history everywhere they are. So after that, I'm going to now I see. Okay, after the we have the First World War, and Canada, as I said, was British Dominion, and Canada engaged in the war after Great Britain and France decided to engage in the war. So French Canadians at this time, they were not very motivated. They were tired and disappointed also. They were tired because we have the problem of identity, and we can remember in 1912 in Ontario, French people was not allowed to teach in France, to learn in France, and they were very frustrated. Again, that's why during the First World War, some of them refused to engage as soldiers, and it is one of the reasons why we needed to have different minorities, and blacks will take this opportunity, because for black in Canada, going to the army is can give them opportunity to be more accepted, to be free, to have different opportunities and or country. So black in the First World War is a very unknown history, because sometimes we just know about the battalion of 1916, but it is not true. Since the beginning, in the front we have in Vimy, in Passchendaele, everywhere in Europe we have blacks among the British and Canadian soldiers. And this history, as I said, is not very known. And it is the same in the second. For example, if I take the example of John Ware in the Prairies, John Ware, he was died in 1905, but during the First World War, two of his sons was recruited in 1914 and sent to Europe as soldiers. Just to make you know, the contribution of black in the First World War is not the battalion, if not on 1916. So after that, we have their contribution in the second the World War II. Always Canada supported the motherland, and always blacks were among the troops recruited. And we have different names, and we know some of them. For example, the Cathy brothers were among the best known African Canadians after their enlistment in the military during the World War II. So they were 5 members of the same family from New Brunswick, and they joined the army. Here are them. So their father, Albert, had served in the 2nd Construction Battalion during the World War I. And there is a tradition in their family. So 4 of them joined the military bases in Canada during that war. So Adolphus Carey, the eldest, was a section sergeant. He was hired as an airframe mechanic. His brother William was a section sergeant and was recruited as an aeronautical inspector. So we have also Clyde, a chief aviator, who served as a firefighter, and Donald, a second-class aviator, was an assistant storekeeper. So fight captain. So we have Captain Gerald Cathy, who served in Bomber Command, flying Wellington and Halifax bombers over Europe. He comes from this family. So we in one family, 5 children gave their lives, their energy. That is a very good illustration of the part of the contribution of blacks in the making of Canada, in the defense of this country, and their love of this country. So in Canadian history, in blacks Canadian history, we have some black personality, and we don't know them. For example, I say that Richard Pierpont, he symbolized the effort of blacks in the war of 1812-1814. Very important personality in Canada. We have Wilson Ruffin Abbott, who chose to fight for his country out of love and not out of interest, because this man was very rich in Toronto, but during the uprising in 1837 and 1838, he decided to be soldier because he loved Canada. We have also William Hall, the first African Canadian to receive the most prestigious military medal. And many of them. We have Renki Wari during the First World War. We have different, and many. I can list here different names, but I know we don't have time. I'm just going to mention that the contribution of blacks to the building of Canada is visible in several areas. It is not only in slavery or in the army, but in my book, and Richard, I only deal with slaves and soldiers. But if you read other books like Robin, like Colin Thompson, like Marcel Trudel, like Daniel Gay, and different books on Black history, you will see their contribution, and we will find more about their contribution of the country of Canada. So that's very important to know and to remind nowadays if we see their place in this country. So to conclude, I just would like to I will end my presentation with powerful words of Colin Thompson. Thompson, which sums up the contribution of the life of African Canadians in their country, because it allowed us to truly understand the blacks have given a lot to Canada, but this country has not always recognized their effort. For Colin Thompson, the reflection of the blacks is an unhappy image. So, indeed, he said, the history of blacks in Canada is sad because of what it reveals about wider society values. But perhaps consideration of the history of can bring about positive results. Perhaps it can prompt the society to examine and evaluate its attitude and actions so that injustice of the past might be perpetrated in the future, so that all the people of this nation might live and work together peacefully in fellowship and of understanding and mutual respect. That is in Colin Thompson. His book is Blacks in Deep Snow, Black Pioneers in Canada, published in 1979. Very interesting book if you are interested in Canadian history. So if you want more about this history that I have just presented and want the aspects I didn't talk about, so I recommend you my book, and I have several copies with me, but just right now I have my book is in French and it is being translated in English, so I would like this book very popular in Canada, and it helps us to know better our history. So I think I will stop here, and thank you guys to listening to me, and I want to say something very important for your questions. I ask to be very clear, very simple, and as you have noticed, I am French speaking, and I am not very fluent in English. So please, when asking your question, do it in a slow and clear way so that I could answer of them. So that is what I wanted to present to you today, and thank you so much. Thank you for organizing this conference. Amherst Book Freedom Museum, thank you so much, and thank you guys listening to me for your attention. Okay, now I'm going to see if we have questions. Yeah. Okay. Great. Great. I have switched. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading your question, and if I see some. Okay. Marcel Trudel's book is available in English. Okay, good. If it is available in English, it's gonna help us more. It will help us more than to understand this history. So thank you so much to give the information. Nicole Roach, thank you so much. Okay. Julie Gibbs, would it be possible to put reading list up at some points? Yeah, it's possible, and I think I gave bibliography to organizer, and they can share with you. Okay, here, Amstel Book Freedom. Dr. Ba has given us a suggested reading list. We will post shortly. Okay, thank you for replying here, for answering the question. So let me see more here. How did I never know about the War of 1812 being a world war? Okay, yeah, right, totally missed. Yeah, as I said in my presentation, the World War I and World War II are more popularized in the history, but the War of 7 years and the War of 1812 can be considered as World War II, because it is not only in Europe and North America, it is everywhere in the world. So thank you so much for your okay. Here, Nicole, thank you, Nicole. Merlin Trudel also has a book called Dictionnaire des esclaves et de leurs propriétaires. Absolument, c'est un livre aussi très intéressant. Merci beaucoup. Hein, je réponds à, à Madeleine qui a écrit en français. Trudel est une mine d'informations pour comprendre un peu l'histoire des esclaves au Canada. So thank you, Madeleine. Oh, Nicole, thank you for joining Canon Flames. Okay, we have got Mary. Okay, I'm just seeing if there is questions. I wish it was translated. Well done, thank you. Thank you, Donna. In 1812, Black were integrated to the ranks of first-line frontline soldiers. Yeah, I can say they played a very important role as fighters, especially with the colored corps, and some of them died, and just wanted to mention their contribution, because the war of 1812 is very important in Canadian history. It is the first time we have French people, English people, indigenous people, and blacks, the minorities, take the occasion to fight against the United States, and that permit Canada to have a different identity, and we have to accept the contribution of the different minorities of this war. How can we get school to teach these to our children? I was so frustrated with my children history lesson that I repeated the history. Okay, this is very great question, Nicole. Yeah, I think it's very important, because if you look Canadian curriculum, social studies or history, there is no place for Black African Canadian history. We don't teach much think about them. Black enslavement or black loyalists or all their contribution. So we need to change the programs. We need to give in history in program the black their place in the history, and that help us to build a nation more inclusive, more open. And all is in education. If you do that in the schools, in the education, that will help us to fight different obstacles, to fight racism, to fight discrimination, etc., etc. Because many of people, they did not. It is not their fault, because they don't know the contribution of black in this country. But once they will know that, I think it helps them to change. So we have work to do for that. So thank you, Nicole, for your question. Je suis désolé, j'arrive en retard. C'est pas grave. Oh, tu pourrais écouter. Ça, c'est Barbara. Okay. So I think I did not see here other questions. If it's finished, I just want to. We have 3 minutes. If you have question, I am available. I'm waiting. Now we have 2 minutes, so can ask me a question. If you have suggestion, if you do not agree with some of my ideas, you are free to let me know, and that's not a problem for me. Can you talk about the primary sources, later military records that you found out in your research about military histories? Was it difficult to find something? Yeah, the military history of Canada is very important for me, because during my thesis, I did my research on black soldiers in the colonization of Madagascar by France from 1895 to until the independence. So I know that contribution was very important in the French colonies. And before coming here in Canada, because I don't know if in your presentation you mentioned that I am from West Africa, Senegal, and I after doing my studies in Senegal, University of Dakar and Prairies, I decided to come here in Canada. And I would like to see the same in Canadian history if we can find the participation of blacks or different minorities. And we can see that in the archives, in different books, letters, we have different sources in the museums. So it is very, my book is just something very little on this history, and we have to do more and more researches, and we have to learn this history. So absolutely. So if some of you have letters, have documents to share with me, I will appreciate, and that will help me to go ahead for my research. So let me see if I have another one. So, John Egan, thank you. Okay, look forward reading your book. Okay, thank you. If you read it in French, if not, so you can just wait the translation in English. Jonathan, are there any ideas about how many black people were in the Royal Navy between? So that is a very good question. I don't know exactly, but to know that, I have to go Nova Scotia or England, and when I did my research on this book, it was just on my own idea. I did not have money to go to and time, but I think we have to know better on that. And the most important was that to make William Hall is known because of the medal, but he is not only the only one. In my book, I speak about another woman who was in Crimea during the war. Okay. Sometimes people think they are British, but no, if they were just from Canada and in the minorities. So let me see here. Katie Grant. We have a Black Canadian veteran story, a word page that includes many stories black. Yeah, thank you, Katie. And it is occasion for me to say you thank you, because you gave me very important resources, information on the black during the First World War and the Second World War. And I know you are doing very good job in Nova Scotia, and you are a very big ally for me. And here is the time to tell you thank you. And I did it in my book in French. J'étais fait un gros remerciement. Merci beaucoup. Nicole. Sorry, guys. Okay, Nicole, we Canadians have to agree that this history of black is Canadian history, right? It's that. It's what Justin Trudeau said. Black history is Canadian history. We have to know that. We have to learn it. We have to accept it. It's gonna help us to create a very peaceful country, and we are in a multicultural country. So I totally agree with you, Nicole. John, have you found much on the Sergeant William and the 12 black soldiers who were transferred from colored coat? So in this period, I want more information on them. If you have documents, you can share with me. I know Canada is a very vast country, and sometimes I need to go to Ontario, to southern Ontario, or in the east. So I don't have all the documents, but my book wanted just to remind people what is black history in this country. Yeah, it's very important, because you say Canada and black people think there is no place for blacks in Canada, and that is not the real history. So thank you so much, John. Okay. Okay, so thank you so much. I'm Sir Book Freedom, and I'm going to stop here. And it was very important for me to do this presentation, and I hope you got no trouble with my broken English and my very big France accent. So I just try to do what I can, and I'm very glad to be here. Thank you so much, you guys. And if you have feedbacks, you can just send me your question, and we can continue to discuss. Thank you, and have a nice day. Merci beaucoup. J'apprécie votre invitation. Last one, Katie. I look forward to seeing the book come out. Okay, thank you, Katie. I will let you know. Absolutely, if the book is finished, translated, I will let you know. So say hi for me to your colleague in Nova Scotia, and you guys say hi for me for your colleague in Southern Ontario. Uh, Good containment, and we hope we're gonna fight COVID-19, and we will organize different conferences, and we will see each other physically because it's very important. So thank you so much, and have a nice weekend. I appreciate it a lot to speak about this history today. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Je vous remercie. Au revoir.